Welcome to The Hot Dish. I'm Heidi Heitkamp.
And I'm Joel Heitkamp.
Every week we do a show that we hope you tune in and watch, but today is a special show because we're here at Crooked Con and doing a show with somebody who doesn't really need an introduction, and that's Chris Matthews. Welcome to The Hot Dish, Chris.
Thank you, Heidi.
Yeah.
Well, Senator?
No,
it was a good title.
Heidi's
it's a good title, a good reality.
You used to do your show on occasion, and it was fun and always fast moving, and we wanted you to come and talk about your new book, but also talk about the elections and what you think, as somebody who's been involved in Democratic politics for a long, long time, what you think the next step should be for Democrats. And so first, let's just talk a little bit about the book.
Well, it's about Bobby Kennedy. Of course, he was killed at the age of 42. The 20th of November this year is his 100th birthday, if he had lived that long. That's why they wanted me to write the book, Simon & Schuster, to commemorate the fact. I wrote a book on him years ago, Bobby Kennedy, and sold a lot of books, and that's why they wanted more books. But it's about a guy. My theme of the book was America is great when it is good, when it tries its best to be good. And that's really true. And if you look at our history, whether it's civil rights or whatever, or even peace and war, when we did the right thing, we shouldn't have gone to war with Iraq. I mean, come on. I mean, I know, God bless his heart, Dick Cheney, but that we should not have done that. But I think the idea of, you think about one image, the train tracks from New York to Washington, from St. Patrick's Cathedral to Arlington Cemetery, where he was putting together with his dead brother, Jack. And you think about the people along those tracks. In Philadelphia, there were 20,000 African Americans who were singing spontaneously the Battle Hymn of the Republic. And you look at all the white people between the cities, between Trenton and Newark and everything. These white people, they all look like enlisted guys because all of them were saluting and had their family in birth order saluting too. It was so different cultures, the black culture, the working class white culture, totally devoted to Bobby Kennedy. And it's maybe the last time anybody's been able to do this or was able to do this. And that's because he was a tough liberal. He believed in law and order. He would say, I want law and order. I don't like riots and stuff like that. But he was for the black opportunity for civil rights. The Southeastern Conference football, okay, just a simple fact. The players, you tell those white guys standing, you didn't have any blacks in his school before Bobby Kennedy came along. Bobby Kennedy desegregated your college, Ole Miss, and desegregated the University of Alabama against George Wallace. He did it. He brought in the Army and made sure this thing happened. And he brought in James Meredith, people like that into your school, and now you have the best running backs in the world. I mean, it's not the only thing that you get out of the community, but it's a vivid reality, and that's what's going on down there. It's an integrated society in those universities, and he did it.
How did people have this image of him during his brother's administration, where he was this tough enforcer?
They hated him. The white people in the South hated him because he was
organized crime hated him.
Well,
and then you go from being this caring person that everybody saw.
Well, I think he got to the heart of the guy. He was vulnerable. As Arthur Schlesinger, the historian, said, Jack Kennedy looked like a guy who didn't need protection. He had it. He's the cool guy. The Sinatra-like cool guy. Bobby was the guy that looked vulnerable as always. In fact, when Jack was killed, Bobby said, I thought it would be me. I thought I would be the one they would get, or whoever the bad guy was going to be. And so he was like that. He was shorter than his brothers. He wasn't as good looking as his brothers. He didn't have it made like Jack and Joe Jr. and Teddy. He didn't seem like that. He was the runt of the litter. That's what his father called him. And that's not an encomium you want from your dad. You're the runt. But that's what he was.
But what a legacy. And, I keep thinking about the heritage of the Democratic Party, and certainly the Kennedys are there. FDR, when people ask me, why are you a Democrat? I said, because my grandmother said FDR put food on her table. It made a difference in their lives, and that's why we were. And I keep thinking, what would all those people say today about the Democratic Party?
Well, that's the problem. there's too much elitism. There's too much snobbery. To be blunt about it, it's snobbery. You get in the Washington bubble. Like, I live in it, and I got to tell you, I am tired of talking about Trump. It exhausts me, and there's too many points of attack, too many shots coming out of the plan he has put together, or somebody's put together, and there's a snobbery about it. The working class guy. I was a Capitol cop for a while, for a few months when I got out of the Peace Corps. It was a patronage job. I wasn't claiming to have worked my way into the job. I was given a job for a while, and I had a 38 special, which is ridiculous. I was armed and dangerous. And there's a guy I worked with, Leroy Taylor. He's a white guy from West Virginia, and he knew I was the college kid. He knew I was the patronage appointment. He called me aside one day, and he's a very serious guy. He's a former MP. He's always talking about smoke. I'm gonna bring smoke into this trouble. He's like, okay, I get your act. And he called me by and he said, Chris, you know why the little man loves this country? And I thought, no, it's because it's always God. And I said, I hope I never forget that. You don't have a fine house. You don't have kids going off to college. You didn't go to college. You never thought about it. You don't have a lot going for you in your life, but you do have your country.
Yeah.
So don't mess with me about it. I care about my country. And a lot of the working people out there, real people, 70% of the country didn't go to college, aren't going to go to college. They're real people and snobs in the Democratic Party. They got to stop this stuff. I don't know where it comes. Who's the worst? I guess I could name some names, but it's like, Dukakis, people like that. It's all academic. We're the ones with academic credentials. And stop it. You're turning people off.
Well, I can tell you this.
Well, out in West, I'm sure, out in North Dakota, I'm sure it's like real, but I'll tell you, it's right outside of Philly. If you look at the map of Pennsylvania, it's red right up to the cities. If it's not for Penn State or Pittsburgh or Philly, it's red.
Well, and it's generational when it happened. Because in my particular case, back home, what we need nurses' aides, we need LPNs, we need diesel mechs, we need all these great people that are going to technical school, right?
Practitioner.
Exactly. Yeah. And we need them desperately, right? And when you talk to them, and you talk to some of the people that head up the Democratic Party, they don't connect because it's like they don't feel appreciated. And you know what? These guys shower at the end of the day.
Okay. Just remember, I was talking to a labor leader from Iowa, and he said to me at the end of the conversation on the air, he goes, "What's this deplorables thing?" I mean, there is a word that has survived and shouldn't have survived. Whatever Hillary Clinton meant when she said it, how narrowly she defined it, they heard it.
Yep. Yeah.
And it means I'm a deplorable, I think.
In spite of all of the criticism that we can levy, we had a pretty good night on Tuesday. It was an amazing night.
Women, too. Women had a big night.
Yeah. Well, obviously the Republicans would love to define the Democratic Party now as the party of Mandami. But, it's the party of Abigail. It's the party of Mikey. It is, and we've forgotten and we haven't talked enough about what happened in Georgia. I mean, I think that the Republicans are salivating to try and get that Senate seat away from Ossoff. But man, if you look at what happened in Georgia, that's a good outcome.
Yeah,
and in Mississippi, and all across the board, huge successes. And I attribute that to the fact that the Democratic Party came home a little bit. Came home to affordability.
Hispanics did.
Home. Yeah. Well, they trusted that Hispanics trusted Trump when he said, we're only deporting the worst of the worst. And all of a sudden they see their neighbors and friends and people who are just working hard in this country being snatched up indiscriminately. And, when you're afraid to walk out in the street, even if you're an American citizen, that does not bode well, in my opinion, for the direction of your politics. But if you look at the fundamental argument is regular people can't afford. I mean, 60% of the people in this country could not, afford a $400 hit to their budget, and they feel it. And Trump is tone deaf on this. I mean, he thinks it's because he wasn't on the ballot. I want to say he was on the ballot every place.
Well, his spending level, which is much higher than the Democrats, his push on tariffs and his push for a weaker Fed, everything points to more inflation. That's where he's heading. And I know it's odd for Democrats to talk about it, but it is inflationary. And he has denied it, but everything he's done, I want lower interest rates, I want higher tariffs, and I want to spend more money and bigger deficits. This is Trump's reality. He's not running a conservative administration. No. And I think the thing, look, I'm more of a moderate on the border. I think nobody has complained about the border being closed for the last 7 months. Nobody, not the loudest Hispanic community leader. Nobody's complained because they know that what Biden did was wrong, that the 4 years of open border did not work. It didn't work for the country or anybody. It didn't work for Hispanics. And yet, when you said a minute ago, the idea of rounding up people who have been here 20 years or 10 years is ridiculous. I heard an Hispanic leader the other day say, give us at least 10 years. Give us some history in this country of ours. And I think if you just said, we're just taking the people that came in under Biden, great, we'll move on from there. Why don't they have a list of who overstayed their visas? Why don't they have a list? Why don't they round up those people? Why do they have to go into Home Depots and stuff and pick up everybody looking for a job? Why are they? Isn't there a better way of rounding up people?
Why aren't they looking at the people that hired them? Why aren't they looking at the individuals that actually knew exactly what was going on? You know why? Because number one, these people work incredibly hard.
I know that.
Oftentimes at jobs that other people don't want. And number two, they like the bosses. They're not dragging them by the hair out in the middle of the street.
Well, I know that too.
And cynically, what we do know is that frequently bosses will hire people who are undocumented and then just weeks before they have to pay them at the end of the project, call ICE. I mean, that's about as bad as it gets in terms of being cynical.
But those people that we talk about, they're in red states too. I mean, but you don't see Kristi Noem hunting in red states. You don't. Yeah. I mean, you see ICE pulling these people from streets in Chicago and New York. And, I can tell you this, in the Dakotas, if she wants to go after these people that are working their butts off, trying to get ahead and make this their home, she could. But she doesn't want to do that because it'll make the red states look foolish.
Yeah. Well, San Francisco is cleaning up its act. A lot of Democrats are getting their act together, too. It's not just the voters about the problems of homelessness and drugs and things like that. And everybody who walks through the streets of San Francisco, where I used to work for the paper out there, you can see it. There's no argument about it. These retail operations have closed. These homeless swarm over the city. The stores close. There's no future in that. And I think the mayor out there and the DA especially are really doing the job. Maybe that's why Trump's staying out of there. But
I want to back up one place, Hayden. We talked about what a big night it was the other night. This, as a former state senator, I think the one thing that's always lost, I mean, you were tax commissioner one day. Yeah. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, gee, I hope to be tax commissioner.
I wonder who's going to be tax commissioner in North Dakota.
And you grew that into being a United States senator. As a former state senator, I can tell you those jobs matter in terms of growth. In terms of where you're going to go politically. In Virginia, at the assembly, look at how they won. They won red seats and the blue took them. That, to me, was the biggest part of the night. That's what excited me. That's all I'm saying.
That part, I'm older than you guys, and I got to tell you something. I was with Frank Moss from Utah, the last liberal senator and he was a liberal in many ways, in Utah. And that sagebrush rebellion that came across in the late 70s swept everybody out of office. George McGovern, everybody lost them in Montana, everywhere. And if we don't get if the Democrats don't get the mountain states back again, we got problems because the geography just isn't there. I mean, why do we have a Senate except for those areas? Because they benefit from the small state advantage of a couple, 2 or 3 seats, and all of a sudden you got as many seats as California or New York. That's what's going on. And I think Trump would like to keep the Senate but get rid of the filibuster.
But
then
these
he'd rule
people
the
are
world.
your friends. Are the Republicans in the United States Senate nervous now when they weren't before about losing control of the Senate?
I think they're more nervous about alienating Donald Trump. I don't think that that changes. I think that they're trying to retrench. But John Thune has never been in favor of killing the filibuster, ever, ever, ever. And Mitch McConnell is loath to do it. But when you think about it, when Trump pushes him to do it, there's going to be a bunch of people who have taken a contrary position are going to flip, but not enough. I don't think Thune has the votes to eliminate the filibuster.
Well, why would he want to do it? Just to obey Trump?
Well, yeah.
Obedience.
Plus, yeah.
Like a dog.
Yeah.
Well, no, really, that's what you're talking about, because you give up the filibuster. Let's face it, it's the same as the House of Representatives. Why do we need a Senate? If you really get into it, if there's no filibuster, there's no need for a requirement. Why even have committees? If the other party doesn't matter, what do you want to hear from them for? If you got a majority, you rule a place. That's what he's talking about doing. Every single appropriations bill gets passed. There won't be any more reconciliation bills. Forget all that. You'll pass every single bill, and you'll run the world. Trump wants this so badly. I will be king if I get rid of the filibuster.
And he wants it because he knows he has total lock control on the senators. That would not have happened in the days of Teddy Kennedy. That wouldn't have happened.
How does Cassidy live with himself? I mean, I know Cassidy's a good guy. He took me to lunch one time just to talk about life and stuff. And Tillis, give me a break. Wait, Tillis, and all these senators that left in last November, that have already left the place. It's amazing how they can live with themselves.
People talk about the filibuster, and when they say getting rid of the filibuster, they talk about when they're not in the majority, how this can come back and bite them in the ass, right? But it's different than that too. It can bite them being in the majority, because now you are responsible, where the minority can't help you from hurting yourself.
Yeah.
Or at least that's how I see it. I see what's happening in the Supreme Court right now, and with the tariffs. If the Supreme Court rules that what Donald Trump is doing is wrong with the tariffs, Donald Trump's popularity is going to go up. And the reason it's going to go up is, they're going to save him from himself when it comes to the economy.
But he loses his instinctive ability to do what he wants to do. But if I don't like China this week, I can screw China. I can screw Vietnam. Anybody I don't like, I can go after Canada again. Yeah. He can't do that if the Congress recontrols the tariff. I worked up there on the Hill. I was Tip O'Neill's AA. I got to tell you, fighting about the tariffs was what we did. The Senate and the House controlled tariffs, and you had to fast track even to bring up a bill. It never worked out that the president called the shots on tariffs.
Well, it's going to be interesting because if his Secretary of Treasury is no dummy, and he's already looking at 232. If they lose under the IEPA, which is the law that's in question in the Supreme Court, if they lose there, they're going to retrench and do 232s. They're going to do 301s. They're going to do other kind of tariff authorities, and so it won't be as broad. But they'll try and leverage as best they can.
Well, he's a smart guy. Yeah. The Treasury Secretary.
With Donald Trump, the thing that's ever going to make him unpopular in red states is going to be the economy. It is. Let me give you an example, Chris. He leans into the back of a plane and blows up ranchers markets by $300 a head, just by mentioning he's going to bring beef into Argentina. Those ranchers are pissed off.
Why is he more interested in Argentina than he is in American votes? Why isn't he interested in American votes?
Well, I think the Argentinian thing was he's getting beat up on grocery prices time and time again. So he needed a villain. He didn't want to talk about the Packers, where the real money's being made when it comes to beef. But he did want to talk about how meat prices are going to go down. He couldn't ignore that. So what happens? Those ranchers, it was time to sell the feeders. It was time to sell those calves, right?
Couldn't have been worse time.
It couldn't have been a worse time. I mean, they were going off. And so here we sit, and they're losing $300 a head. That's a lot to ranchers at a time when they're finally making money. He didn't care. We got soybeans laying on the ground in the Midwest that we can't move because he picked a fight with China. We're never going to get a big part of that market back. And so my point in this is you can subsidize it. You can send money out to these guys. You can say, look, Wilbur Ross, we'll just buy you off kind of an attitude. But the ranchers are going to remember this. And the ranchers are pissed off. That's all I'm trying to say.
Well, and the question is whether the Democratic Party can win some of those rural votes back. But, when you look at kind of the trend line, the best you can hope for, I think, is that there is a disillusionment factor, that it will curtail kind of turnout among that broad base, and they'll say it just doesn't matter.
When I travel around, I've done it recently, Pennsylvania. I'm a city kid, and we always were amazed. We went on a religious retreat one time in my senior year, and we just went an hour and a half from the city. And all of a sudden, every diner was playing country western. And we said, what part of the world are we in? And it's right here. The country's right here. But then I more recently went around about Adams County and places like that, near Gettysburg and all. There's no downtown anymore. I mean, there's no gift shops. Remember gift shops where you could go buy gifts? There's nothing like that. It's all Walmart and everything somewhere out of town. There's a gas station. There used to be a Blockbuster. At least you could get a movie. That's all gone. There's no newspaper. There's no local conversation. It's arid. The rural parts of Pennsylvania are arid. There's nobody there except some angry people, and they are angry, at the Democrats especially. And they talk about politically correct or whatever. They had a big store. All they sold was Biden stuff, negative stuff. That's all they sold. and so angry. And I go out there, and I'd ask somebody how they're going to vote. He says, how are you going to vote? Yeah. I mean, it was like a reaction was, tell me how you're going to vote. Like you're the bad guy.
I ride motorcycle. And when I went on my trip this year with my buddies, we went through northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin. We made the big swoop around, right? I couldn't possibly imagine, with my mom and dad and with the way they raised us religiously, with the way we were taught to talk, you would have these flags out, and they have them out that are F Biden. Okay.
Yeah.
If we flew a flag like that, Dad would have had it. He'd been kicking our butt till our nose bled. He would have been that mad. I mean, but these people are doing it. Yeah. And it's okay culturally to do it. The school bus goes by that flag every day, and yet they're doing it. And I don't know how we got there, Chris. I don't.
Well, there's a coarseness to all of this that I think has really discouraged a lot of people, but it also has motivated a lot of people. I mean, you think about the No Kings rally, 7 million people across the country marching, and not angrily, which is interesting. And I think that's probably more discouraging for the right than anything, is that these were not, crazy people who were, like, kill somebody. These were people who just said, look, we have an opportunity in the 250th year of our democracy to fight for our democracy. Yeah. It's our job now. And this is how I can do. I think one of the things that we're missing all along is a call to action. And that's what the Kennedys were so good at. I mean, you think about ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. That call to action is what we're missing. But I think it's coming back, certainly among certain people, unselfishness.
I have to tell you, I researched all the books on the Kennedys I've written, and I found out where that came from. So I went up to his prep school, Choate, and I got it, and I was very lucky, and I was being helped by the archivist of the school, a woman, and she brought out the headmaster's chapel notes. And it was a Protestant school, and they always had chapel with the headmaster. And in the notes was the line, ask not what your school can do for you, ask what you can do for your school.
Really?
And I found it in there, and I go, bullseye. This is when I went looking, because Ted Sorensen never said he wrote that for Kennedy. And nobody else said it. Nobody never said, maybe somebody will, but I found it actually in the notes. And I go, this is where it came from. Kennedy remembered that. He didn't like Choate much. He didn't like the headmaster much, but he did listen to him. And that line, it was unique English too. It's not regular English. No. Nobody says ask not. It was from school.
But who's been able to deliver a speech like the Kennedys since the Kennedys?
Well, I think it's it came out of Adlai Stevenson in the early 50s, and then Kennedy evolved something else. He started to ask people, the Peace Corps. I was in the Peace Corps. I'm telling you, when you ask somebody to do something, you basically create a friend. because as Machiavelli, I dug this out in one of my books too. Machiavelli said, if you want to make a friend, ask somebody to do you a favor. Because when you do somebody a favor, you become one of them. What's a Kennedy person? Not somebody that got some welfare from the Kennedys, but somebody who worked for them. Somebody who was in the Army or the Peace Corps or anything else at the time of the Kennedy era. I think when you get somebody to work for you, they become your guy, your person. And I think that's what that was all about. People will say to me, yeah, my daughter worked for Kennedy back in the 60s. Oh, yeah? You're a Kennedy person. Yeah. And so if you ask people to do something for you, if you ask them to do something for their country, they're patriotic. I mean, it is so true, though. As I was talking about the soldier, the enlisted guy who spent a couple of years or 4 years in the military, he's very proud of having been in the military.
Absolutely.
And it may have been a rough time for him. It's discipline. It's taking orders. And yet when it's over, you go, yeah, I was in the military and you weren't.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
As an example of what I think you're getting at, of our dad. I mean,
Yeah.
our dad was constantly asking people in our hometown, and he was the leader of that town, small town. But here's an example, I think, of what you're getting at. In our church, the men took a great pride, no matter what the season was. The ground could be froze 4 feet deep, but the men were going to go out and dig the grave. They were going to go out and dig the grave anytime someone passed. They weren't going to pay somebody with a backhoe, and our dad would organize it, right? Sometimes they're holding the bar, chipping away. Sometimes they got the axe, chipping the dirt because it's that froze. But Dad would call them, and he'd say, here we go at this time. They loved Dad. They really did. But they had no choice. They were going out in that cold weather, and you didn't want to be the guy that didn't come out.
I know.
And it was Ray called.
That's what my dad used to say when he was talking about end of life. And he said, it's cold down there.
Yeah.
It's an Irish tradition too, because I got called to be a pallbearer when I was like 10 years old. And because they didn't want to hire somebody. They don't know. We don't hire pallbearers. No, we bring them in. And so I got called in to do it, for some distant relative.
So if you were going to give advice to the next round of Senate candidates, Chris, and said, what should Democratic Senate candidates be doing right now and be doing during the campaign to build on this momentum that was created on Tuesday?
Well, I think they have to speak, which they haven't done. The Democrats haven't done. And I don't understand why you would want to be a senator and not have something to say. I mean, after all the work of getting it into the United States Senate, you would say, I've got something to say. Schumer doesn't seem to have much to say. I always attribute it to the enormous amount of human time that he spends raising money. And he's on the phone, I imagine, all day long, the Senate leader. That's what they do. Just raise money, raise money, raise money. Kiss the butt of somebody on the phone. I think Israel's great or something. Whatever that person wants to hear, you got to tell them. And you're exhausted. And I think that I think Schumer's like that. I'll just say this for both parties. Why does David McCormick get elected to the United States Senate from Pennsylvania, which is, to me, an amazing ambition, and not say a word? He hasn't said anything. He's been in office. What is he? Why do you want to be a senator? For the honor of being a senator, but not saying anything? Where are they? Fetterman, at least in his strange way, is running around with shorts on and acting like he's a Yahoo. Like, where do you come from?
But he's got something to say.
He does. And I think the question is, Chris Murphy's got things to say. Look, it looks like the next Democratic nominee for president is going to be a governor. And I say that because the Democrats are tired of losing. They don't want to hear it. They don't want another oddball out there. They want a governor who represents a big state or in any state and represents both parties, because you have to be able to talk to both parties to be a president. Bill Clinton could do that. Maybe Gavin Newsom can do it. Maybe we'll see J.B. Pritzker, maybe Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania, maybe Wes Moore. Could be Wes Moore for VP. I think Wes Moore is VP material, because I think the Democrats are going to have to run a moderate, and it's somebody from somebody who looks like they're from the left as a running mate. They don't have to run a left winger. I don't think that's necessary. But if you run an African American, people would say, well, he might be a left winger, he might be on the left, but they got to run a moderate, somebody like Josh. Or they really have to run somebody who runs and takes the middle, just takes it, because I think they showed they can get it. The Mikey Sherrill winning this week was like a Democrat of the old days, a Hubert Humphrey or somebody would win because he seemed like he was with the working people. He just seems like he's one of them. He's regular. And I think that they need to get that back. Obama couldn't do it. I loved Obama, but he didn't seem to connect with regular people. And you got to find a way into the hearts of people and say, you know what? I don't know much about this guy, but I think he's with us.
Well, part of that recipe you just talked about is what this is about. Right?
Yeah,
you talked about the train ride. You talked about stopping. You talked about people, stopping and talking to everybody to the point where they all felt like they were part of it. In my home area, I mean, you got John Thune out there saying what he's saying. He's talking, right? He's a leader. I've got John Hoeven. John Hoeven in North Dakota still hasn't said anything. I don't know what he's for. I get him on my radio show all the time, and we always laugh afterwards saying, okay, what did he say? I mean, when he's done with the interview, everybody I'm around going,
because he didn't want to say anything.
Well,
he reminds me of the guy in the Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. Remember, I dance a little sidestep. I just go,
Larry.
Yeah. Well, there is no premium in taking a position anymore. And
well, that was true with Ronald Reagan, who people liked. My job working for the Speaker for 6 years was to come up with a Democratic member on the House side to respond to Reagan on the radio on Saturday. And I would call up the people. I'd say, you got something to say. You're smart. I don't say you're smart. And the guys they'd all say, no, I don't want to contend with Ronald Reagan, because people back home, whether it's Rostenkowski or anybody like that, you may be from a Democratic district, but they liked Reagan.
But people don't like Trump. That's the
well,
mistake.
I hope that's the case.
No, that's absolutely the case. Even people who vote for him are disgusted by the behavior, don't like him. But they don't think they've been given an alternative, which is the failure of the Democratic Party, not to provide an alternative that people can, in fact, see as a potential. He is not beloved.
Well,
I do not think Donald Trump is beloved.
The one question on my radio show that the right, which, I come from right country, so I have a lot of politicians on that are from the right. And the one question I ask them that makes them the most nervous, and now they know they're going to get asked it, and they don't have an answer for it, is, do you think Donald Trump's a good person? Do you think he's a good person?
That's a great question.
Then you hear this long pause, and they wait for you to jump in and save them.
The long pause is, should I lie? Should I lie?
And to be honest with you, none of the people I've talked to have said yes. None of them have said yes. Now think about that. He's president of the United States, and none of them think he's a good person.
Well, I think that's a great question. It's like I said in my book, if you want America to be great, start with the fact it's going to be good.
I love that.
You got to be a good country. And that means dealing with immigration in a reasonable way, dealing with the bad guys, get them out of here, fine. The people that have been causing trouble, fine. But respect the fact that somebody's been going to church and paying taxes and not getting Social Security and not getting Medicaid, despite the lies of Michael Johnson. They're not getting it. It's not true. You can't get it if you don't pay in. I'm sorry, that's how it works.
Yeah.
And that was Roosevelt's genius, because he said, I'm going to make sure this is you have to pay for it. I want people to pay for Social Security, and I wanted them to get it if they're a zillionaire. I want them to get it still, because I want people with wealth to protect Social Security. I want them to believe in it, too. So he said it's not going to be a means-tested program. It's not going to be the way a real super liberal would want it. He just says, I'm going to make it a program that people want.
Well, I mean, we have so much more to talk about, but we want everybody to know this is going to be a great book.
Thank you. It is.
I think the theory that in order to be a great country, we have to be a good country is something that calls to the higher angels. And so congratulations,
You sound like
Chris.
Lincoln.
Yeah. No, I don't. I wish I could sound like Lincoln. But thank you so much,
Thanks
Chris,
for being on the
on the
show.
Hot Dish. Hot Dish. One more episode. And we're so glad you all tune in, and we're hoping that you continue to visit us. It's brought to you by onecountry.org.
And we want to know what you think. So please let us know what you think. I mean, this is a work in progress. This is something that we want to do with you. So do that. Go to onecountryproject.org. That's onecountryproject.org. And both Heidi and I thank you for joining us.